Hey everybody, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. On tonight's episode, I'm changing up the format just a little bit. You may have heard, if you watched my channel update on YouTube, that I'm just mixing things up a little bit. So I want to keep getting more and more voices, right, on the channel. So while I, am obviously the one that is talking most of the time, there are other folks with other experiences that I want to kind of bring into this. Grant Willbanks has become a good friend of mine. We kind of just met through each other's YouTube channels and have talked quite a bit and found that we had quite a bit in common. So wanted to kind of bring him in because he's a sort of a Jeep guy. I mean, he's not a Jeep loyalist, but he has a Jeep TJ. He's, had a variety of vehicles. He had an old International. He's had some cool stuff. And he's done a ton of overlanding in the Ozarks. So on this sort of first episode where Grant and I are going to kind of hang out together and talk through some topics, we're going to be kind of covering sort of a news section. So like it could be news from, manufacturers. It could be stuff about channels. It could be stuff about stuff happening in our lives, that kind of thing. We're going to kind of cover a news segment. Then from there, we're going to go into like a weekly catch up. So like, what did we do the last week? Are there any mods or trips that we took? Things like that. And then we're going to kind of hit our main topic. So on tonight's episode, this kind of first episode of the joint Grant and Fletch show, we're going to be talking about how overlanders find solutions for problems. And that originally was not the intent of this episode. Originally what we were thinking was, what are our favorite DIY mods? And then as we started to actually shoot the episode, we started to figure out that it's not even really about the mods, it's about the problems that we were encountering and the lack of solutions or the expense associated with the solutions that are kind of out there for it, and how that drove us to then come up with our own solutions, right? So I think this will be a really interesting episode. Again, it was a great chat, so stay tuned to hear more on that. So hey everybody, on this week's weekly catch-up, you've got Fletch from All Things Overlanding and Grant from Arkansas Off-Road. Grant, what'd you do this week? Any cool mods or trips or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm actually at a pretty pivotal moment right now. I'm actually, this week I went through the Jeep and did a lot of maintenance because I'm selling it. Actually putting this on the market and selling the whole rig, which is a way to start out this episode. But have some opportunities in the works and a lot of cool news coming up. But yeah, this week was scrambling to, grease all my fittings and, make sure the tires are balanced and rotate everything and like oil change. And so, getting it ready for the next owner. So been really good.
Yeah, I hate to say it because I've had a Jeep. I like Jeeps. I don't have anything against Jeeps, but I'm not really a Jeep guy, but man, I love the TJ. But I'm not mad at you. I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah.
I think it'll be good. I'm sure it'll be good.
Yeah. I know I have some people that are mad, but you can't please everybody. So
yeah, you just got to do what you can do. Yeah. It's like that mustache.
That's right. This is my mustache. Yeah, it's still going strong.
I'm impressed. I'm almost 40 years old and I still can't grow anything on my face that doesn't make me look like a perv. So.
Well, I still look like a perv, but it's fine.
Yeah, but a perv that can grow a mustache, right? So that's better than a perv that can't grow a mustache, I guess. So
what you got this week?
Yeah, no. So I actually just got back from a trip. It wasn't really an overlanding trip. It was just a camping trip with the 7-year-old. He got riddled with poison ivy, so that was fun. He looks like a leper now, so we're just trying to stay away from him and keep pants on him at all times so that he doesn't infect anyone. Although I read that that's not actually true. You can't get poison ivy from someone else, which I didn't know. But so that was fun. We had a lot of fun camping. Got to use the DIY rooftop tent, and so far so good. I mean, it's nothing fancy. I wouldn't be able to sell it to anybody or anything like that, but it was comfortable, and it was, literally I set up a tent for the kid, and it took like 10, 12 minutes to set up his tent, put all his stuff in it, and then I undid my 2 clasps and opened it, threw a pillow in it, and I was good to go. So it was nice. It's good.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, we'll see there may be some new things coming later on in a new episode that may be changing, but for now I plan to keep it for as long as possible, so we'll see.
That's awesome, man. On
today's news topics, I did want to talk a little bit about, and it kind of depends on when this video comes out, so it may be really new or it may be kind of new. if you're a Nissan fan and you follow me, which is possible, you've probably seen the video from Nissan about Nissan Next. So they've got a ton of new vehicles coming out. They're reducing the lineup a little bit just to make things a little bit more streamlined. So I'm super excited about that stuff. I mean, I got into Nissans because of my Z. So I had a 350Z. I don't know if you know this or not. Grandpa back in the day, I had a 350Z and modded the crap out of it and autocrossed it and road course raced it and had a really good time in that. And that was kind of at the same time that I had that. Then I was like, man, this is horrendous in the snow. And I live in Indiana. So I was like, this car is completely impractical. I have to have something else. So I bought my Jeep. I bought a 2000 Cherokee Sport. And so then I had both at the same time. And that's when I finally figured out that, like, that's the perfect combo. 2 cars, 4-wheel drive lifted car you can go off-roading with, sports car that you can drive around in the summer. Like, you're excited for both halves of the year, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm super excited. They've got a new Frontier coming. They've got a thing called the Terra, which I don't think is going to be an Xterra. I think it's going to be more like the Pathfinder, like more of a unibody type vehicle, but could be a good next car for the wife, you know? And the new Z just, they like threw it back to the old 240s and combined it with like modern engineering. And supposedly it might have 400-ish horsepower. So probably the 3-liter twin turbo out of the Infiniti Q50, Q60, the newer ones, which they have a red sport version, which has 400 horsepower. So that could be pretty exciting. That's some pretty exciting news. So on today's show, we're going to be diving into some of our favorite, you know, both Grant and I's favorite DIY mods that we've done to our current or past trucks. Doesn't have to be the current vehicle. If you did something super cool to a past one, that works too. But so if you're like us, you know, I mean, I think Grant and I both kind of share the opinion that we like to DIY stuff as much as possible. I mean, I like the cost savings. I like the customizability. Those are all good things. It solves a problem and gives you what you need to make your setup work, which is hard to find sometimes when you're just buying stuff off the shelf, right? So when this happens, you know, overlanders have to get creative and just make shit up, right? I mean, let's just be honest. That's what has to happen. So today we're going to kind of talk through those projects. So Grant, you want to go first and kind of talk about one of your favorite DIY mods you've done?
All right, so the first mod that I did to the Jeep, and probably my favorite one overall, is the air compressor. I have a video of that on my channel if you want to check it out. But so I know you can go and buy an ARB, you know, twin compressor, single compressor, whatever, and do what you want with it. But those are several $100s, and that might not fit everyone's budget, obviously.
No.
And you know, you could even buy like a $30, $40 compressor. I wouldn't really advise that. I don't probably take a long time, but like the spectrum, right? Like there's a huge price difference in those. So I found sort of probably middle of the road, I would say, just regular compressor. And it's a step up from Harbor Freight, probably a little bit.
Nice.
You know, Amazon, that's probably all of our DIYers, you know, best friend. So this one is a Masterflow Tsunami. And I think when I bought it, it was like $90, somewhere in there. Nice. So what it is, it's a portable compressor. And so it's got the alligator clips on it, right? And so the idea is you just chuck it in your vehicle and, you know, you hook it up to your battery and you do all these things. So, you know, that's a great solution if you're not using it all the time,
right?
You know, just to throw in your car and have as a backup.
Yeah.
But if you're overlanding and, you know, you're hitting the trails all the time, you're down and up all the time, you need something more consistent and something that just has a better process, right? I think that's like what we're all about, is making everything easy. Like, we're just late. You know, it's just like that weird thing. So the thing with DIY in general, to me, is just solving your own problem. It might not be your neighbor's problem. It might not be, you know, whatever. It's just, what is, you know, the problem in your case? And so for me, dude, I had this compressor in a box in the back, under some stuff. Like, dude, it was so annoying just to take out. And by the time I took it out, you know, all my buddies are aired up and stuff and whatever. So anyway, what I decided to do was snip the alligator clips off and just hard mount it under the hood. You know, I had space for it. My windshield washer reservoir was not in there, just from the previous. There's a big void, and so I was like,
nice,
this is perfect. So I put 2 and 2 together. I kind of, you know, mocked it up and made a little mounting plate, and got out of there for like $150.
Nice.
And it works totally fine. I have no complaints. I've, been through the mud and water crossings and, got it really hot and stuff, and it still turns on, turns off. It's great.
Yeah.
And another thing is it's pretty simple to make because you don't have to like hardwire it to your dash or anything like that. I just actually switch on the compressor.
Nice.
So
yeah.
the hood's going to be open anyways, so why not just flick that switch? And so I made that. And then the second part of that, I guess, was the hose. So I made my own hose.
Cool.
I made like a little quick disconnect fitting thing and made a nice little mount like up in there in the rear of the Jeep. And so I keep the hose all the time, there. And now I use it much more than I would, and that's what it's all about. So yeah. that was probably my most utilized and favorite DIY project.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like you mentioned it at the beginning, right? But like that we all have these problems, right? And they're similar, but we solve them in different ways because you've probably seen mine. I have a similar thing. Yeah. I'm cheaper than you. I bought a Bi-Air 88P, so it was like 50, 60 bucks.
Yeah.
But mine's inside the truck to avoid that whole water problem, right? But then it's hardwired basically into a universal plug, and then I've got the alligator clips in case I want to take it out, but I never take it out. And I've got an extension cord on it so I can air up around the truck. So it's just funny, like yours is in the front, mine's in the back. We solve the same problem just in totally different ways, right? It's interesting.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's part of it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, yeah, cool. So that was my first one. What about you? What's one of your favorite mods you've done?
Yeah. So speaking of the rear of the truck, right next to that air compressor, I've got my DIY drawer system, which I'm sure you probably looked at these drawer systems, right? Like those, what are the goose floor, whatever the hell they are for Jeeps. Yeah. And please, if you're listening, sponsor me. Like, don't take offense. Like, they're fantastic. I'm sure it's much higher quality than what I have, but oh my God, they're expensive. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars for some of these systems, right? So I looked at that, and the same thing that you just mentioned, right? Like trying to solve a problem. I'm like, I want to go more, and I want to pack less, and I want to be prepared. But I don't want to spend $1,500 on literally like a plate with some sliders on it to put my gear in the back and still have to solve all the problems of like where everything goes and what happens. Yeah. And I've got a buddy that's like a super talented woodworker, and like, it's not even just his hobby. Now he makes stuff to sell. Like, that's how good he is. He makes like tables that he sells for thousands of dollars. And I was just like, hey buddy, if I buy you some beer and all the wood and I come over and hang out and you like teach me how to do it, which I didn't do anything. He did everything. But I was like, could you, if I have a design and I bring my truck over in my design, could we like build this thing? And he was like, yeah. And it took about 3 weekends probably to finish it all up. But we built a whole custom drawer system. It straps down. So the exteriors on the back have like a Utilitrack system where you can just sort of basically screw things down and tighten it down. So I've took some different fittings and fabricated that, but it's got 2 drawers on the left. On top, it's got a battery box with a small deep cycle in it that hooks to my solar in the front. And then it's got room for all my food and fire starting stuff and electrics and lights. I keep a folding chair in there, a tarp, a bunch of heating stuff. So all my like hot hands and just stuff for winter camping, because I do winter camping quite a bit. Wash basin for like cleaning dishes is kept in there, like all kind, like tons and tons of stuff. And then the big slider on the right side has a 36-inch, 250-pound slide on it. And then inside of it, we actually built it probably about like 7-8 inches tall. And then I've got my double burner stove actually on another slider that comes out of the main drawer. It's like that, or the main slider. So the slider comes out and then the grill comes out of the side. So you can use the top of that as like a table. Or basically what I do is I've got straps on it that I can strap down a fridge freezer, or right now I use a cooler and a water jug. Then when I get to camp, I set up a separate table, move all that stuff off, got a table with a whole cooking area right there. And like, again, solving problems, right? Like before I was like setting up all these tables and like stuff sliding around in the back, especially when you're off-roading. Like I don't think people that haven't really been like some of that stuff on your videos, right? Of like the stuff in the Ozarks, like, yeah. If you don't have everything strapped down back there, you're going to get to the end and like everything's going to be soaked and your water thing's going to be broken. There's going to be jerry cans laying over with gas everywhere. Like it's just not a good situation. So now I solved that problem. I've got everything exactly where I want it, and it takes me way less time to pack up for a trip. And it's like Definitely one of my favorite. Like, I'll never get rid of it. I will always, if I go to another vehicle, I'll probably find a way to make it work in the back because it's just great.
Yeah.
So I love it. So that's my first one.
I have a question about that one actually.
Sure.
So what was your did you have a setup before that to kind of get you by?
Yeah. Yes and no. Like, I don't know if I would call it something as efficient or official as a setup, but like, so I had 368 quart Plano crates, which just so happened to fit perfectly across the back of the Xterra. And so I had one that was like cooking stuff and one that was like recovery type stuff and boots and water, like rain gear and stuff like that. And then one that was like everything else, all the electronics, the flashlights, all that stuff. But like, you know, again, I go camping year round. So like, you hit winter and then I'm rearranging all these boxes. So stuff was always in different spots. Same problem, right? Like, they were always, I either had to strap them down or they were moving around, or it just wasn't ideal. And I don't have a ton of storage in my house. Like, I had some up like above the garage and I had some in the basement. And so I'm like digging through 3 different boxes to try and find that one piece of gear that I need. And it was just a nightmare. So yeah, that was my setup before. I think I did a video on that a while ago that was like how to pack your Xterra. And now when I look back at it, I'm like, God, that was terrible. Like, I would never do that again.
Yeah. And that, man, that's the thing. Like, I think people get so like fascinated by the coolness of the thing of like a pull-out drawer system. Yes,
Yeah.
it's amazing, it's efficient, but like, my biggest thing is, you know, you need to learn that you need that. Don't just go out and buy it. You know, like, you can easily spend 10 grand on stuff you could get by with much cheaper, you know, like, I don't know. Just you need that. You need to experience the rough time before you realize if you need it or not.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great point. And like, if you've seen any of like the previous videos about the drawer stuff, like, it took me 4 years to get there. Right. Like, it was like, and it was my daily for years and years. And I was like, I would never do that if it was my daily, because I lost all the room in the back. Like, we can't, you know, we used to go and pick up mulch every year. We had to get mulch for the whole house. And like, my Xterra carried a bunch of it. Right. And now I literally can no longer do that because I have this permanent drawer system in the back. So to your point, go out in your stock vehicle, learn the limits of the vehicle, learn the stuff that you really need. Because I've changed my gear over 50 times probably since then. And now finally I feel like, okay, I can build a drawer system and I know what needs to go where. So yeah, great point.
Yep.
So what about your next mod? What's your next favorite DIY mod?
So along that line, actually extremely similarly, I built a rear shelf system. So, and it's hilarious because it's definitely not a system. It's a solution. So, you know, I had so many plans and drawings and like specs and like a build list and everything of a drawer system that I was going to do in the TJ. Mm-hmm. And this was actually the very first mod I did, but regardless, you know, I was like, man, I need a drawer system. That'd be so sweet or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got around to thinking like, wait, why do I need a drawer system? Like, why do I pull gear out? Like, a TJ is so small,
right?
Like in the back, like, you know, you don't need to reach really far over and grab things. Like, it's right there. So I had it and, you know, on paper and everything. And I was like, wait, you know, this is, I'm fine. I don't need this. Like, it's so cool, but I don't need this. And so what I actually ended up building, and all these mods I'm talking about, I have videos. I'm sure you do, Fletch, on your channel as well.
Yeah.
But this one is like almost comical how simple it is. But it's also one of my favorites because it's like, hey, I did this for like $40. Like,
right.
I didn't spend $1,000 like I was going to on a
right.
That's like the most satisfaction like about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just to give you a little detail of, you know, what this looks like. So basically it's a few sheets of plywood. And what I did was, you know, like I mentioned earlier, of like, how did we get there, right? What was our previous setup? And my previous setup was just took the back seat out, threw all my gear in there, and every time I went camping, I would Tetris it a different way, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, man, to get the thing at the bottom, I have to move the thing at the top, and that creates this weird puzzle. And it's like, oh, dude. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'll do drawer system, but I was like, no, I need to think simpler. And so
Yeah.
all it is literally is just a shelf. And what it is two separate planks or pieces of plywood that sit on the rear wheel well.
Yeah.
And they come down, so it's sort of like an L for each piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hard mounted. It doesn't need to be, because by the time you get gear on there, it does not move.
Right.
And I took my back seat out. So if I did want to put my back seat in, it's probably 30 seconds to take this thing in. So
Nice.
I've solved that problem. I've done it cheap, so everything's adding up.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe 1/2 inch plywood, just some cheap plywood, and I wrapped it in some carpet, just
Nice.
glued
Yeah.
carpet on there, and made it look nice.
Sure.
And used some L brackets to kind of fix the two pieces together, and then on top I put a couple of those like metal tie downs, that you see on the like truck beds or something.
Yeah.
Then I basically put my gear on top of it, like where I decided its home would be. And then that's where I decided where the mounts, would be drilled into the carpet. And so now it's like, I know where my gear goes. Everything fits perfectly. This adds to my OCD-ness, so it's great. I got little slots for my chairs to go in, and
Nice.
I even made it to where I could fit all my crap and my dog.
Nice. It's important.
Extremely, I don't know if I'd advise doing all that, but it worked.
Yeah. We should maybe call this episode like Overlanders Solving Problems, because it's more about that than mods, really.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
But back to the rear what's it called, drawer system versus the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I went camping with my buddy. He got a Tacoma, and he has all his gear in like Plano crates, thrown in the bed.
Yep.
And I remember I specifically had to walk over to his truck to get something he wanted me to, or whatever, and I was like, dude, this
Yeah.
sucks. Like I literally need a drawer in this situation. Like, I have to army crawl in the bed to get this thing. So that's an example, right? Like, don't just assume you need a drawer system. I'm sure in your case you have much more room in the back of your Xterra.
It's not bad.
So of course, you probably need that drawer, which makes sense. But, in my case, I didn't really need it, so didn't have to make it. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, the Plano crate example again, because it was probably like 2.5 years ago when I was still like very new, like maybe my second or third overlanding trip that I'd ever taken. I hopped in with this group of folks going up to Manistee National Forest in Michigan, and it was winter. It was like January 5th, like the beginning of January, cold winter in Michigan. And I went up there and had all my Plano crates thrown in the back, and I planned to sleep in the truck because I was like, it's negative temperatures, right? Like, I am not prepared for that. I don't have any of the gear that I need for that. So I was like, I'm just going to sleep in the truck. So then we would get to camp, and like everyone would be set up in seconds. And then I'm there and I'm like throwing everything into my Plano crates and putting them on the roof of the truck, and like airing up an air mattress that like doesn't fit in the truck and is all bent up. And every morning I woke up to a flat bed basically. And it was terrible. So again, it's like you learn every time you take a trip, you learn something new, and then you make the modifications required to make it better. So
yeah, that's what it's about.
I love it. Love it.
All right.
Cool.
You're up next. What do you got next for us?
I'm going to skip to my solar panel and battery box, which I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
But this is definitely one of I'm saving the DIY rooftop tent for last, you'll notice. But
okay.
The solar panel and battery box is still one of my most used and favorite mods. And it's part of the box. It's part of the drawer system, kind of. So, but it is a separate thing. I mean, for those of you that don't know, I have a solar panel strapped to the hood of my Xterra, which I drilled 8 holes through the hood to mount that thing, and it was terrifying. And I did it as it was getting dark. Like, I started on it at like dinner time, and then it was like dark, and I'm like, I have to finish this tonight. But I finished it. I love it. It pumps. It's a 100-watt Renogy solar panel like you would use on a house. Like, it's not one of those flat mount ones that are the shape of a Jeep JK hood or anything like that. It's nothing fancy. But I actually bought it used on Amazon for like $130 for the controller, all the wiring and the solar panel itself. So it was a steal of a deal. And then I bought like literally the cheapest deep cycle battery I could get. It's like a 35 amp hour. It was like $60 on Amazon. Came with like a 2-year warranty. I'm like, how can I go wrong? So like for 200-ish bucks, I built this into the box in the rear. And then I bought like a little 6-panel switch for the front of it with like a voltage counter and a master on off switch. And then like some USBs and a couple DCs and all that good stuff. And it's awesome, man. Like, so I run a lot of electric stuff. So I run radios for like the kids when we go out. If I go with, I feel like a lot of times I go with folks that have not been overlanding before. So I'll give them one of my GMRS radios, but I keep those charged off the solar. I run an electric chainsaw, 10-inch Black & Decker, and I have 3 batteries for that. And I just constantly keep rotating those in the back on the solar. And then like I charge phones, laptops, all that stuff. And as long as it's daytime, like even as it's getting to be dusk, that panel is so good that it's just throwing power into the back of that thing. So I had one time, I think, where my battery actually died, my starter battery. And that was where I was like, this is terrifying. I do not want to walk 20 miles through the woods or, you know, like I just don't want to get stranded somewhere. So that's when I decided to just separate the entire charging system from the main starter battery. And I tell you what, since I've done that, my peace of mind has gone way up. Like I used to like be so paranoid that I would go and start the truck every night before I went to bed. I'd start it and let it run for 20 minutes or so. Every morning when I woke up, I'd go and check it and start it and let it run for 20 minutes just to make sure that I was good. Like I was just constantly terrified I was going to get stuck, because some of these places I've gone are like, I mean, you don't see anybody for hours, you know? And it's like, God, what am I going to do if I don't have reception, right? But with that solution, like again, for a couple $100, like it's a bargain. I have peace of mind that the truck is going to start the next morning, and it's just convenient, right? Like, it's just nice to be like, hey, I have literally unlimited free power and I can just charge everything. Like if I ever go and like just live in the woods for 2 weeks, it'll be awesome. I have nothing to worry about. So, so yeah, so I think that's my next one.
Yeah, that's awesome. So. And I'll even go back and say, there's a reason you made that, because your starter battery died and it was fear, right? Like you didn't just say, solar panel will be sick on the rig. Let's just, like, you know,
solving the problem.
Yeah, you practically solved it.
Yeah. So cool. So what's your next one?
Yeah. So my last one. So in the show notes, guys, I put in parentheses "when fail" here. So I think I've mentioned this in another podcast that me and Fletch did a while ago. But so this is the onboard water system, and you'll find out why it's a when fail later. But so the problem, I guess, that I wanted to solve for this one. You're right. We are turning this into a
what it's all about now.
Problems we're solving. Yeah. But yeah, man, what I wanted to do. So I had, one of the Walmart. Actually, I still have it, and I still like it a lot. But I have the Walmart. What is it? A 5-gallon blue tub thing. I can't remember the amount. But that thing's great. It's nice and square, and it fits in good places or whatever. And so I liked that a lot. And what I didn't get out of it was pressure, and I couldn't really like move it around. And I needed that because I'd been on several trips where, I had to get to my rooftop tent and my feet were like so muddy, my boots were gross, and I didn't want to get it on the ladder and like get inside and in the sleeping bag, So I wanted a way to like clean that and then clean my dishes. And then also like I'm not going out for weeks at a time, but, for those like 3, 4, 5 day trips, having some sort of shower is nice.
Right. Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to use this water system to do all of those things. So give me some spritzing of a shower and, do all the other things like clean my dishes and what have you. So I still use that old Walmart thing just to have, like, it's nice for extra water, like if I'm stranded and need to drink something. But anyway, this water system I made, the biggest thing, like I said, was to be pressurized, right? I needed some pressure, and I needed to like move it around a little bit more. So the idea came very organically, which was awesome.
Nice.
So I walked into my local Harbor Freight, which is a DIY's paradise,
Yeah.
as well as Amazon, like I said. So I walked in there, not even realizing like, hey, I need to make a water system or whatever. And I went in and saw they had a special on the like weed sprayers, right?
Yeah.
I think it was $15 or $20.
Nice.
And I was like, whatever, that's who needs that, whatever. And then I looked at it, I was like, wait, that's kind of cool looking. It looks like a power.
Yeah.
Like, it looks like one of those like $500 power tanks or whatever. And I was like, okay, like, do I need it? No. And then I was like, wait, I could put water in it, and I started like adding these things together. And then I went down another aisle and I saw like, the air hoses, and I was like, whoa, I could make an air hose, make water come out and like all these things. I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. And so I basically went trick-or-treating at Harbor Freight and got all these pieces together, walked out with like, for like $50 or something.
Okay.
And, it looks sweet. I painted it. I did all these cool things to it. And, and I used it on several trips. It worked really well. I put it, so I mounted it in a really cool spot too, like on the roll bar in the rear.
Yeah.
So it's nice and high. It's out of the way. And I can use that hose, and walk around the Jeep almost and, spritz off anything I need to. And so that worked really well. So the downfall of this, I trace back to user error. And if you guys want to make this, I think you can. I would say with confidence you can, but just don't pump it up so much. Because I think the instructions were like, give it 30 or something pumps. And I like doubled that because I was like, I'm going to make this pressure last. I have a 3-day it lasts so long. And so I was packing the Jeep, getting ready for a trip, and the water was like the last thing. So I filled it up in the hose and was about ready to mount it. And I went to pumping it up, and idiot. I pumped it really hard and the back just exploded. And I was so bummed, man. I was like, I was going with some of my buddies, and I was like, can't wait to show you guys this sick water system. And didn't end up taking it, obviously, but I tried to fix it with like, the JB Weld glue and all this stuff, and it was like, it's blown plastic. Like I can't do that. So it was a win fail.
Yeah.
It solved the problem of I did take a shower with it. I did use it for my dishes and all that stuff for a couple trips, and then like the third trip I think is when it decided to explode.
Yeah.
So, I'm lucky though I didn't make like a PVC bomb. Because making like a road shower or something, because my buddy Matt McClellan, he did that, and it sounded like a bomb went off in his neighborhood.
Really?
Oh, it was bad. Yeah, it was real bad.
Wow. I've thought about making those things because they look awesome. And that's everything. Every video that I watch is like, just don't go over like 30 or whatever, right? Like, just don't go over 30 and you'll be fine. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It'd be really nice.
Yep.
I just won't shower.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to die.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
What do you got for us? What's your last one?
That's great. Yeah. So my last one, I already kind of gave it away, but my DIY rooftop tent. So again, theme of solving problems, right? Like, I love watching all these people with their rooftop tents. And like, my problem is I've gone through probably like 5 or 6 different sleeping solutions. Like I was hammock camper for a while. I tried a different type of hammock. You kind of have to have the right trees, the right distance apart. So like, it could be difficult at different sites to find the right place for hammock. So then I was like, I want a tent. And then I got this god awful tent that took forever to set up. And I was like, that sucks. And then I got like an instant up tent, which was great, and it was inexpensive, like that Coleman 4-person, literally like one of those like hampers that you just undo and it just explodes open. But it was so cheap that like, still, even with that was almost instantaneous to set up. But then I was like laying on the ground and like my back would hurt the next morning. Like, this is awful. So then I tried a cot. Now it's fine, but then I got to take a cot and a tent and a sleeping bag and memory foam pads and a pillow and all this junk. So then my truck was full of stuff. And my setup was still like 10 or 15 minutes to get everything set up. And I'm just like, this is terrible, right? And then I started to think about rooftop tents, and I started to look at those. And, you know, I have a couple buddies that have like the kinds with the vinyl covers, like the Smitty builds and that kind of stuff. And nothing against those tents. They're great tents, but like setup, you still have to undo a bunch of straps and then unzip a bunch of stuff and then take that vinyl cover and it has to lay down the other side of your vehicle. And then you have to fold it off the side and set it up and put the awning poles up and all that stuff, right? Which again, that sounds very first world problems of me, but like it was still like a 3 to 5 minute setup, right? Which is still better than a tent, but I was just like, man, I don't even want to do that. I want like the fancy clamshell style, but they're like $2 to $4 grand. And I was like, I might as well just buy a trailer or something for that kind of money. Like, why would I even buy a rooftop tent for that? So then I stumbled upon a group that was like, hey, we make our own rooftop tents, and they're actually really nice. And I started to do more and more research, and I was like, okay, I'm not that talented, so I know I can't make something that nice, but I can make something functional. Yeah. And so again, with the woodworker buddy's help, like we built a box that actually fits together fairly well. I put a couple of latches on it that will take locks, so I can lock it. But I put my memory foam up there, I put my sleeping bag up there, put my pillow up there, and I've used like a backpacking tent, so it's really light and it's A-frame shape. And I attached that inside of it, so it just sits in there, and then basically I'm waiting right now for the material, but then I built like a fly for it that's just going to kind of hang from the roof of it, and that's going to waterproof it. So there'll be more to come on that, but I've used it probably 5 or 6 times now, and I mean, setup is 30 seconds. So it takes me longer to unlock the locks than it does to actually set the tent up. So I have to undo the 2 locks, and once I get those off, pop the latches, and literally it's on gas struts, right? And I've got a bungee cord that goes around it that I undo to let the tent furrow out, and that also makes closing it down quicker. But I mean, like, I have 4 inches of memory foam in that bad boy. Like, I've got my 0 degree bag in there. I bring a full-size pillow because I've got so much room in there. It's just nice. Like, why use my little tiny camping pillow? And I mean, again, it's a little janky, but like it looks kind of badass on the truck, I think, because it's just this huge Herculine black box on the roof. And it costs like $250, $300. So like for the money, if I use it for a year or 2 and it falls apart, that's fine. You know, like it doesn't bother me. But so far, so good. I mean, it's been totally waterproof. It's been great. I probably, like I said, used it 5 or 6 times now, and it's great. So that's probably my top one. I'd say that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the most involved DIY mod. Like that, you got to get to that thing.
Yeah, well, and it's on with 8 3/8-inch U-bolts, so like I'm literally gonna have to get an angle grinder out to cut that thing. Like I'm not gonna go around and undo bolts for an hour and a half or 2 to get that thing off. So someday when that comes off, I'm just gonna cut it off, or just hit it with a sledgehammer until it breaks up, and then I'll get the U-bolts off afterwards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So. But yeah, it's pretty good.
There's not a lot of DIY rooftop tent videos that I've seen. I mean, there's a handful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mainly this guy, Patrick Remington. He kind of started the group, and he made a really beautiful tent. He's made a couple of them now. But man, they're just, it's the same, it's along the same lines of like overlanders solving problems, right? Like these people are brilliant. Like there's so many different designs, just like the air compressors. Like there's a million ways that you can do it. But the fact that we all saw a problem, we said, I'm going to solve it, and I don't want to spend a bunch of money. I don't want to pay these overbearing prices for these products when I could probably do the same thing. And some of these things are nicer than the ones you can buy. Like they'll make them out of like all aluminum and weld them and I mean, it's crazy the stuff these people have done. Now those ones they're spending $1,000 to $1,500 on, but they're getting a $5,000 tent, Yeah. So yeah, but it's a pretty cool. It's a neat idea. I loved the idea of just doing it just for shits and giggles. Like I can justify a couple $100. I can't justify a couple thousand to the wife, right? So
yeah. Definitely. All right, guys. Well, I think that will wrap up the episode. Yeah, like we said, you definitely don't have to go out and buy, the most expensive thing or, think you can solve a problem by just throwing money at it. You can if you want. We're not saying you can't do that, but we think it's kind of important to just consider the problem you're solving, right? And see if there's like creative ways you can go about making your own stuff, because you will get a lot of satisfaction from it. And you'll save some money, and it's just a great learning experience. So yeah, we appreciate you guys so much checking out this episode, and thank you guys for listening, and stay tuned for the next one.
All right, guys, so that was our episode. As I mentioned, we learned a lot from each other, I think, tonight. We were able to see kind of that it's not even so much about the DIY stuff. It's also just about overcoming obstacles and issues and solving those yourself, right? And how much fun that can be and how customized the solution can be. So I hope you guys learned something from that. I hope you guys had a good time listening to it. I hope it was interesting. But I know you guys have done a ton of DIY mods yourself. So I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. Post up and let me know, like, what things have you guys done to your rigs? What gear have you modified to make it better or fit your situation better? Those are the things that I want to hear from you guys. So definitely post those up in the comments below. Join the conversation. Again, if you're new to the channel, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram. Send me a message at allthingsoverlanding@gmail.com. However you want to engage, I'd love to talk to you. Definitely, again, click the subscribe button, click the like button if you like this video. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for that too. Come join me on the other channels so that we can start a conversation. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.